I've been one of the harsher critics of this potential pick. I think that's fair to say. I still have concerns. I've made it perfectly clear. I think 95, 99, whatever, a lot, the vast majority of the Caleb Manny dynamic in the locker room will be totally fine. I think they're both incredibly mature pieces. And to be honest, those two individually are the least of my concerns about it. It's kind of all of the external factors, teammates wondering about nepotism,
Mhm.
benching if that ever becomes a situation where he's going to play in the lineup, that kind of thing. But after the pick was taken, and I was at the draft party yesterday because I really wanted to get a feel of what the general community thought about this pick. Because you and I, as pundits, we look at this pick in a million different microcosm ways. How this will impact the lineup and how this will impact the dynamic in the locker room and how Caleb's ceiling will go when the Canucks need a bunch of scoring talent and what's his floor. But general fans don't have the kind of time that we do to look and parcel out every single aspect of this guy's
Mhm.
game. So I realized after I spoke with, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 Canucks fans just around, asking them how they felt about the pick and obviously hearing their reaction. I'll admit I might have been looking at this the wrong way the entire time. Another one of my biggest criticisms of this front office was the potential of too many like minds in the front office, with pretty much the entirety of the 2011 Stanley Cup final team coming together to make this draft decision and really all future decisions for this organization. I felt there was no real counterpunch to what these guys are all thinking as very like minded individuals. And I think that having group thought in situations like this is one of the worst things that you can do. But with this pick now, I've got to wonder, is this maybe just the start of the greatest storybook chapter in Vancouver Canucks history? And let me explain why. Looking at the big picture, they were one win away from the Stanley Cup in 2011. It was arguably the biggest heartbreak the city has ever faced. Riots broke out because of it, and the emotional toll that it took made it so that team could never get back to the same spot again as a core. Now, those players who lost that game are coming back to redeem the franchise when it's in the worst spot it's been in recent memory. And the franchise piece, the Jonathan Taves-esque piece that you were describing last week, is the kid of the guy who's was the heart and soul of the Canucks for that playoff run and got his career cut short. This is the extension of Manny Malhotra. This is his lineage. His career gets cut short. A new career begins in Vancouver in 2026 and starts a new era of Canucks hockey. To me, that's pretty cool. And if this core and this management team is the one that brings the Canucks back to legitimacy, I think it's going to be looked back on the 2026 draft as the redemption of the team that couldn't get it done before and now has a chance to redeem themselves and do it the right way with the men who were unable to do it as players now in the position of management trying to rise, or I guess increase the prospects of this team both in its player pool and in its organizational management. So I am more excited about it than I was before. Talking to again fans as well, there was a lot of optimism around the pick. Again, I don't know if it's the highest ceiling choice considering the talent discrepancy that this team has right now, but in terms of a storybook start to a new era of Canucks hockey, this might have been the best possible selection they could have made. And obviously, I hope it turns out that way.
Yeah, no, that would be quite something with all that storybook stuff. I mean, like you said, all those guys were, other than Ryan Johnson, but he was a part of that era of Canucks teams who were winning President's trophies. Finally, this is what maybe puts them over the hump I just think overall the Canucks in the past, 6 months have made correct decisions. Whether it was trading Quinn Hughes, I think that was the correct decision at the time. Whether it was fully going all in on the rebuild, that was the correct decision. They made the correct decision with Ryan Johnson, the correct decision with Manny Malhotra, the correct decision with Caleb Malhotra. Obviously, you didn't get the first overall pick, which you would have liked, but it wasn't something you can control. And so, yeah, I would agree with that. Overall, things are turning around because I think they, out of all the things that have been in their control over the past really 5-6 months, they've made the correct decisions on. And I think you're getting a guy who was really productive last year in the OHL. I mean, we've talked about him so many times. I think overall you're just getting a great player in Caleb Malhotra with a pretty high ceiling in my opinion. But overall, I feel like this team and franchise has made a lot of promising decisions lately.
And it seems like they're doing it with the right things in mind motivating these
Yeah.
decisions is what's huge. Like, obviously there has to be a long-term plan and vision for what this team needs to look like, considering this rebuild is going to take a long time. And Dom from The Athletic just dropped an amazing article the other day about how long it actually takes teams to start drafting, develop these people, build them into, first of all, just competing and then eventually contending. Like, it is a long road. And clearly, what the Canucks have done is put a huge emphasis on character and culture and bringing in pieces who they think will fit into this new dynamic that, again, needs to be washed away considering all of the stink that has been around this organization for the past few years. But just as a final wrapping point on the whole like 2011 storybook thing, I can just imagine now the TikTok edits when the Canucks eventually do make it back to the playoffs and hopefully far into the playoffs
Yeah.
with Coldplay's "Fix You" in the background with like the 2011 Canucks losing, and then it's a big, splash of music and colors when they're scoring goals and back. And I don't know. I can
Yeah.
see the vision of what this redemption story could look like in Vancouver. And again, to put more emphasis on this character and dependability aspect that the Canucks are really focusing on, like Adam Novotny, like as soon as he got drafted on TV, all they did was call him a character guy over and over and over again. I actually thought it was a
Yeah.
little bit insulting considering the amount of goal scoring talent this guy has. They really just focused on his character. And Rogowski, and again, I promise I'm not going to pronounce these names 100% correctly all the time. I
Yeah.
will in the future. It's the first day they're Canucks. Give me a fucking break. Rogowski, he said one word to describe his game: reliable. Caleb, just one word to describe your game: dependable. Nicholas Adam Olsen, I'm just going to call him Big Nick from now on. He said smart. Like, this draft to me was clearly about just getting the right guys in the
Mm-hmm.
building rather than specifically the right players. And it seems like in terms of the right players, people who I trust immensely in the draft, like great friend of the show, Dave Hall, one of my favorite people in hockey, period. He thinks it's awesome value for Novotny.
Yeah.
I would have liked to get Preston at that
Yeah.
33 overall pick just because of his upside. But again, it seems to me like Rogowski has some really, really good physical traits, obviously, but also showed more flashes of skill towards the end of the year that you hope can bubble in, and just a heck of a shot from the outside. Overall, with the next couple of picks the Canucks made, Caleb, were there any that stood out to you rather? And are there any picks that you were kind of upset that they left on the board? What was your overall vibe after Caleb got taken?
Well, I thought Novotny was a good pick, very productive guy with the Peterborough Petes last year. My one concern with him, though, is that was really his only really productive season throughout his career. He spent some time in the Czech Pro League, got 3 points in 41 games. The year before that, got 1 point in 10 games. And listen, that's a pro league, I get it, but not very high production. I get he's got a good frame for someone his age. He can be physical in front of the net, good shot. But like you said, I really would have liked Mathis Preston